Okay. So I did a little PowerPoint on, so what I did is I actually went on the internet. I had some drawings that I had from my career, but I was, when I left my job, I couldn't take every project I ever worked on. I had to get their specific permission to take the files out of my office. Because that was just part of the agreement I signed when I started working there. It's like I couldn't just like download their whole server and get all their standard details and use them when I started my own company. So it was very closely, and it wasn't like they strip searched me when I left. It was more like I had to sign an agreement on my professional word of honor that I wasn't going to steal all their files, that they had to give me permission what files I was going to take. So I have a few files that I bought for my job. But I found some other ones on the internet. And what I did is I wanted to show how, like in the commercial realm, and we can do the same thing in residential, how you go in and annotate and deal with exterior elevations. So let's keep going here. So typically, these are like the rules. The exterior elevation should be at the same scale as the floor plans. So if you're working on a house and your elevations are your floor plans at 1/4 inch per foot, your elevations on your working drawing should also be at 1/4 inch per foot. Similarly, if you're working on a commercial building, which are often drawn at an 1/8 inch scale, your elevations should be at the same scale as the floor plan. So if you're working on a commercial building, they have what's called structural grids, which are like the center lines of the columns. They should be shown, the level should be shown, and the section should be shown on your elevation. So if you have a section through your building, it should show up on the exterior elevations. And Revit is great because it kind of idiot proofs all this stuff. So my theory on exterior elevations is I turn off the topo solid because I want to see that foundation below the ground. So instead I draw a dark annotation grade line and show the foundation below grade. In a perfect world, the stuff below grade is dashed. And I'll show you how to do that as part of this assignment we're going to talk about today. So the materials need to be called out with annotation or keynotes. So annotation is you just draw an arrow and you say, LP SmartSide siding, 6-inch exposure, painted blue or paint color 1 or something like that. Or you can do keynotes, and I'll show you some examples of this. The windows and doors should be tagged on the elevation if they're tagged on the floor plan. So some of you have gone through and have started doing that already on your Habitat house. Elevations traditionally are hidden line black and white, but I am open to using Revit realistic mode if it makes your drawing easier to read. So back in the day, color printing was extremely expensive, like 10 times as much as black and white printing. So nobody ever did their construction documents printing in color. What's happening now is most people are using PDFs and they're just not even printing out that many sheets. We're in the transition. We're going to kind of paperless construction, where everybody's got a tablet with the PDFs on it, but there's still a lot of printing that goes on. So I'm still kind of a traditionalist, but I've been open to, in some cases, if the elevation's really complicated with a bunch of different colors, it might be just as good to do your elevations in color on your construction documents. So I'll show you some examples of this. So this is a CAD elevation done of this building. And this is the, I don't know which side it is. I think it's the south side of the building. But anyway, this is an example of what I was talking about. Structural grids are these little bubbles on the top. So this is a 7, this is grid 6. We talked about these grids on the plans, but they show up through the elevations. And then your levels, just like they do in Revit, your levels run through all the way through the building. And the grid lines run all the way through the building. And then these are section lines. So this is section 4 of sheet A302. And then that's the direction it's looking, and that runs all the way through the building. You'll also notice that they used keynotes to key the materials in. So example, keynote number 2 is brick. So wherever I see a little triangle with a 2 on it, it's brick. Keynote number 4 is architectural precast concrete, 8-foot pieces centered typical. So wherever I see a keynote 4 in that triangle, I know that's architectural precast concrete. Let's find another keynote here on the material. What the heck is 19? 19 is a recessed brick course, 3/4 inch as shown. slope bottom grout joint to drain. So apparently if we walked around this building, they actually set two of the brick courses back, and then that grout joint has a little bevel on it so it didn't trap water on it. I've never even noticed that. I should go try to find out where this is on the building. Okay, so that's an example of this building. So here's one of the ones I did personally. It's up on French Island. So again, you can see the rules are, I'm showing my structural grid, in this case, FG, it's running all the way through. Here's my section thing, section 2 of 8301, that runs all the way through. And my levels are running all the way through. In this case, I also did keynotes. So here's 0401. 0401 is brick veneer. 0403A is a reveal. So that's like a little recess in whatever material it is, which is 0403, which is a cast stone panel. So you can see up there, 0703E is pre-finished standing seam metal roof. Okay, and you'll notice again, my windows are keyed back on my elevation. And so when I look at my window schedule, I can tell exactly what that window is on the elevation. Here again, my stuff below grade is shown dotted. Let's see, on the HSR one, their stuff below grade is dotted. Here's one I found off the internet. So in this one, the levels run all the way through. You can see the dotted lines for the levels. The sections run all the way through. In this case, their grid lines did not run all the way through. So you don't have to run, if there's too many lines on your drawing, you don't have to run these grid lines all the way through. So they can just be up above the building and stop. Now this one, you'll note that they called out the materials with notes and not keynotes. So here you can say, this is brick soldier course where the bricks stand up like soldiers, and it's color number 4. And there must be a chart somewhere that tells them exactly what color number 4 is. This is brick color number 2. This is pre-finished panel type 2 color number 2. So this is your way to tell the people that are doing the construction where the different colors and materials are on the elevation. CJ stands for, any guesses on what CJ stands for? Think about your masonry class that you had with me, the building materials. What did CJ stand for? Remember, I took the piece of paper and I tried to pull it apart and I talked about how the brick wants to crack when it expands and contracts. CJ stands for, the second word is joint, and control joint. Good. So that's a control joint that allows them to determine where the cracking is going to be. And you can see here, they're telling them that this looks like a little light fixture, that it's centered in that wall, because you can see they actually, you don't do a lot of dimensioning on these things, but in this case, they actually dimensioned that so that they showed that it's centered on there. Now, why one of them says equal and the other one actually has a dimension, I really don't know. So here's a example I found from, and if you go back here, they did the way of not showing the foundation on your elevations, which I really don't like, because your grade slopes down and you need to know like where your brick stops and where your foundation stops, especially if you've got sloping land that requires you to step the foundation and where the masonry is. So I'm not really thrilled with how they did their grade line here. This is a fire station down in Sanibel, Florida that I found on the internet. Here you can see there are structural grids stop. They don't run through and they're in color. These sections do not run all the way through. They just put an arrow at the top and an arrow at the bottom, but they don't have it running through. The grid lines also stop and they don't run all the way through. Now I'm okay with all of this because the reality is you really don't need to know that second floor, you don't need to see that dashed line all the way through your building, just like on your Habitat house. You probably don't need to have that dashed floor line all the way through if you don't want, as long as it's readable on the right-hand side. You'll notice they use color for some of these things. I think Tim's a fan of using color for the grids. And I think Tim actually is going to teach you how to use color for the dimensions, which I'm not so sure about. They did their dimensions wrong. The dimension number should not stop the dimension line. So whoever did this was not a very experienced draftsperson because they set up their dimensions wrong. But it's a nice set of plans. So you really don't need dimensions on your elevations. And I'm being a little bit sarcastic here. Is this a news flash that the 114 foot and the 100-foot levels are 14 feet apart that I have to put a dimension on there? No, it should not be a news flash to you that the 114th floor is 14 feet above the 100-foot floor. So I think the dimensions are not required on these elevations. And I mentioned on item 5, the dimensions are drawn incorrectly. Now, in this case, they are showing their topo, which again, I don't agree with because I want to know what the foundation is on this. Now, maybe in Sanibel, it's just built right on the sand and it doesn't go down below frost, but they still have to have some sort of foundation to keep it from blowing away when the hurricane comes in. So I'm not thrilled with showing my topo on my elevations. So again, here, I kind of stole my thunder. So I'm showing you just the topo solid is turned off here. Topo solid is turned off, everything's dashed. This example doesn't show the foundation. I think this is a mistake. I think it's really prone to confusion, especially if you had a sloping site. Because if I have a sloping site, my foundation oftentimes has to slope down to stay below frost. And then my brick ledge has to slope down to stay so that I don't see a bunch of exposed foundation. So I think this is a mistake, actually. So I'm going to talk a little bit on this one. They show the topo solid cut through the earth section. So does this help the contractor? Does it help the contractor to know that there's earth beneath the surface of the earth? No, I'd much rather know where my foundation was. Any idiot should know that when I stand on earth, below me is going to be more earth, right? I don't need to have 6,000 little hatch marks on there showing me that I have dirt below the ground line. I'd much rather know what my foundation is doing below the ground line. So I don't think this is the right way to do drawings. So you can see they did their keynotes just with notes, but then they also noted how not only the material, but how it's finished. So this is an important point. Painted metal stair support by others. It could just as easily have been galvanized metal where it's left galvanized exposed, or it could be powder coated metal. Or if it's aluminum, it could be analyzed aluminum. So telling them not only what the material is, but what the finish is also important. So here it's pre-finished standing seam roof, painted PVC column wrap, painted pre-engineered metal stairs and supports, painted Portland cement plaster finish with lap siding bead. So telling them the material and the finish is a great idea. So we talked about this again. I should have looked at this PowerPoint. I used some of my slides. I talked over them earlier, but you can see they're telling them the colors. There's a color color key on this drawing right here where it says metal panel colors. If you ever walk around this building, we've got all kinds of different colored panels. So here, the 1 stands for those wood grain panels. The 3 are the weathered ones, and the 2 are the zinc ones. So let's see if we can see where those metal panels are. Do I see that? Oh yeah, so here's keynote 1. So those are all wood grain panels in that location. Here's keynote 1 again. So those are all wood grain panels in that location. So that's where they let the contractor know where the various colors were. Same thing here. I spoke with it before. I called out the materials with keynotes. Here again, there's probably a chart somewhere on this elevation that I didn't copy where it tells you exactly what color keynote color 4 is, color 2 is, color 1 is. Here, again, we just talked about that one. Windows and doors are tagged if tagged on the floor plan, so you can see the window tags. They did not tag their door, which I disagree with. So if you're tagging your windows, you should also be tagging your doors on the elevations. Here in this case, the windows are all tagged. I don't have any doors on the little snippet that I gave you. Here, the windows are all tagged. So they're tagged on the floor plan, they're also tagged on the elevation. So now we're gonna talk about the whole black and white versus color issue. So this is the house you're working on for this assignment. So they're typically drawn hidden line black and white, but I'm open to using the Revit realistic mode only if it makes it easier to read and you've got very complicated colors. So I did a diamond keynote in here. And I did the same diamond keynote in here in realistic mode. I actually think that hidden line is easier to read. It's easier to see your keynotes. It's easier to see what's actually going on. I think the color in some cases is distracting. So my view is the vast majority of cases, the hidden line will be easier to read. You can show them your colors on your renderings and all that, but I don't think they're really necessary on construction documents. So like if I was trying to put notes or find out where let's imagine I had a little like light fixture somewhere. I think my light fixture would be easier to see on the hidden line one than it would be on this dark realistic mode. Okay. That's all I got. Now let me show you your assignment. So here's the assignment. So I'm using that same file that you worked on for your floor plan. You can save it as a new name, call it assignment 5.2. So let me open it up. Add fascia to house to match garage. So I went through and I added a fascia on the Revit model on the garage. So if you click on that, I've got a flat 1x6 fascia on the garage. There is not a fascia on the rest of the house. That's just the exposed edge of the roof. So as part of this assignment, you are going to get practice. Even if you did the quick and dirty method on your habitat house, this is going to give you the practice of actually adding the fascia onto the Revit model. So that's item number 1 you need to do. So now let's go back in and show you what item number 2 is. I want you to add a soffit on the house to match the garage. You draw the flat soffit first, and then you draw the slope soffit at gables. So this video shows you how to do the flat soffit and the slope soffit, and then it also show you how to do the pork chop with a fascia board and the join command. So let's first off show you the soffit that I did at the garage, and then we'll talk about the pork chop next. So again, I went through and I did the soffit at the garage. So let me get down here and look back up at it. I'm gonna hide the site here. Okay, so I've got a soffit in there, and then I've got a soffit in on the slope. You can see I've got a wood grain, like a 1/2-inch plywood soffit on 2x4 studs. Okay, and then I made a pork chop. Now I made my pork chop by modeling it in place. And then I've got let's show you the back side of this here. This one right here. I've got a 1x12 fascia to make up the backside. And then I made a pork chop out of modeled in place. Now the book shows you how to use that soffit board and then combine the two together to make it join those two. So you can use either method, I'm okay. So I want you to, even though you may not have done this on your habitat house, I want you to go through and add the soffit and the pork chops as necessary on the remainder of the house. Okay, so let's go back in and so there's my way of doing the pork chop. There's the video that shows the other way of doing the pork chop. So then you're going to complete elevations in sheets A201 and A202. So let's show you that. So I'm going to go into sheet A201. Oops, I clicked on the wrong thing. I got to click out here. So I've already set the sheets up for you. So what I'm going to ask you to do on these 2 sheets, so you can see my sections that I'm doing are going through. I'm showing my levels going through. I've got my windows all tagged on my elevations. And one other thing, if you're using double hung windows, turn off the little ugly little arrows going up and down. If the schedule says they're double hung windows, they're gonna know they go up and down. We don't need 6,000 black arrows on our drawing showing that the windows go up and down. So turn that off. So if you click on, well, you know how to do that. Okay, so now let me show you the assignment one more time. I want the items below grade to be dashed, just so you get some experience doing that. I've already done the west elevation, so let me show you that one. So I went through and I used the command, which was called modify view line work. And I went through and I just made those lines below grade hidden. Now, if we have enough time, the problem is what happens is when you click on the hidden line, it takes it all the way up to the end of that element. So really the only way I can figure out to fix it is if I had enough time, I would go in with a dark, not a dark, but a solid annotation line. And that little bit above grade, I would just fill in the lines there. I don't know, since I was too lazy to do it, I'm not know if I'm going to force you to do that. Now you can see I missed some of these. But that's how you can go through and edit the line, how it displays. So you get a different color, dashed, I should say you get dashed lines below grade. Okay, let's see what else we want you to do. I want you to call out materials and colors on each sheet. So when we call out our materials, you just saw that big long PowerPoint. We don't have to every time there is LP SmartSide shakes, or if you call them cedar shakes, which is what they're really modeled at in this particular model. We don't have to like point every place they are, because that's the beauty of having this drafting pattern. We just have to point to them once on each sheet, right? So on one of the elevation sheets, I'm going to call out these shakes. You could say they're painted dark brown or whatever. And then that's enough for that sheet. Every time they see those shakes, they're going to know that that's what that material is. What else do we want you to do? I think we're nearing the end of the list, but let me check here. Show roof pitch symbols. So Revit has big, ugly default roof pitch symbols. You can watch this video if you haven't already done it on how to make them look a little bit less ugly and huge. Turn in one PDF with 2D, I'm sorry, 2 scale architectural D sheets of A201 and A202. And in this case, I want the Revit file turned in as well, because I can't see if your soffit and fascia is drawn right unless I can actually get in the model and look at it. So my plan is you can have this done before you leave today. If not, we'll have to adjust the schedule, but I'm hoping that you can get this done in class if my understanding of how long it took me to do that little part of it was multiplied by 3 or 4. Okay, that's all I got. Thank you.